Happy Thursday, friends, and welcome to this edition of the Mystery Wine Blind Tasting. I'm Neal, your host for this little number, which frankly is very expressive. It is one of those wines that immediately out of the glass, as soon as it's poured, it begins to express itself, which will make for a fun series of descriptors, I have no doubt, with respect to the aroma. And we'll find out, of course, about the taste as we move forward. If you're joining this evening, please let me know. And we'll get underway with this little guy. Lots of fruit. We're going to be looking for a few things, as we typically do, of course: fruit, earth, and wood. Trisha, Andy, and Kathy, long lost, but you're back. It's great. Wonderful to have you with us. Thank you for joining. Bobbin and Dean, good evening to you wonderful folks. Welcome. Yeah. Sorry, it's just kind of drawing me in. I'm getting ahead of myself from the visual evaluation standpoint. I just want to keep smelling it. There's some notes here that I really remember or can draw from, but I it's not an immediate like, oh, I know what this is. It's got kind of a cross section of a series of different things that are suggestive, but we'll see. Sheila and Eric, hey guys, welcome. How are you? Glad to have you with us this evening. Eric has helped us in the past from a wine standpoint and is pursuing further wine education, but he's done with us poured wines for one of our buying events, our wine buying events. And to be truthful, and I think Eric would probably agree with me, Sheila's got the better palate, right? Just kidding. But nevertheless, glad to have you guys with us, and Renee and Curtis joining us this evening. Thanks, guys, for being here. All right. So as we get underway with Brian and Amy joining in too. Hey guys, glad you picked up the wine last time you were in. It was great to see you. All right, so let's start. And as we start, of course, we look at the wine first and foremost, and that word is important. Look, we look first before we're necessarily smelling or tasting. You learn a lot about a wine by its visual appearance. And one of the things, of course, you'll note is color. This is a red wine. So from a blind tasting context, we already know half the world's wine, essentially, is out of the window. It's not a white wine. It's not a rosé wine. It's not a sparkling wine. I guess it could be a port. So we have to determine whether it's a fortified wine. But other than that, we're looking at what does this wine tell us from the color? And Curtis is jumping ahead, which is great, or is contributing with what kind of color. So it's a very purple color. So you've got kind of that bluish purple kind of end of the spectrum all the way to sort of light, tawnied, browned kind of quality of a wine. And in between, you've got brick and you've got, a little bit of reddish color all the way through then to that deep, darker quality. And then what's the intensity of that color? Is it something that you can see through? Or is it something that if you're holding it over a newspaper, could you read the letters or not at all? Does it black out or render everything invisible underneath it or through it? And that gives you an indication. What does that tell you? Deeper purple colors and lighter red colors, two different types of varietals that might be in the running. Tannat, Petit Verdot, Cabernet, Malbec on that other end of the spectrum. Gamay, Pinot Noir, lighter expressions of, say, Syrah, something Grenache might be on the redder side of the spectrum. And there's variations in between, but the idea that the color tells you a whole bunch is important. Candy, Kevin, and Kathy, good evening. Welcome. We're looking at this deep purple number, and then the opacity of the wine and whether or not you can see through it indicates kind of a robustness in the wine or a lightness in the wine. Something like Pinot Noir isn't necessarily a light wine per se, but it is one that isn't going to have as much skin contact, extraction, depth, which gives you a tell vis-a-vis what the wine might be in terms of the appearance. And so on this, I don't think we're looking at Pinot Noir. So already this game is underway and we haven't smelled or tasted anything, and we know we're talking about something that's on the more robust end of the spectrum just by the color and by looking at it and not being able to see through it. And then you swirl the wine, and as you swirl the wine, you're looking at the top formation of that swirl, and whether it drops tears, and then do they hold their shape in an outline that forms a leg. And so the legs on this and the tears are substantial. They run relatively quick, but then they hold fairly well. The speed at which this drops is an indication of alcohol, or really it's an indication of ripeness in the grape, and then the transformation of that sugar in the grape to alcohol or to residual sugar, which we'll know more about when we taste it, if there's any residual sugar. But I agree, Candy, with Kevin's note about cough syrup. There is a quality about the fruit that's exploding from this glass that is at one point like sugar sweet, candy sweet, and then there's a medicinal herbal quality, like I always kind of reference that Luden's cherry cough drop. There's this candied confectionery cherry quality here, and then there's a little bit of a scent of medicinal too, and there's an alcoholic component on the nose too. So we're obviously already jumping ahead to the aroma portion of the evaluation. But from the visual side, just to finish it, right? So we've got a viscosity that's indicating a little bit more ripeness and warmth. We've got a grape that's going to be a little bit more powerful and more robust in its profile, or grapes, maybe it's a blend. And from that standpoint, we know quite a bit about this wine. We know more right now what it's not. And so we're not going to spend our time necessarily focusing on this being Pinot Noir from Burgundy or from Sonoma, for example. We're going to spend more of our thought process on what are rich, robust varietals, and according to kind of the leg and tear formation, maybe a warmer climate, or at least a warmer vintage. So that's an outline, right? We're putting up the bumper rails on our bowling lane so that we at least knock some pins down. Whether we get a full-on strike or not, we'll see. But we're setting ourselves up to at least succeed as we finalize our assessment of this wine. Earthy cough syrup. Earthy cough syrup. So let's smell the wine. And as I mentioned, looking for a few things: fruit, earth, and wood. In this case, the cough syrup gives us a little bit of earthiness and that medicinal fruit. But what do you smell? Gosh, yeah, tons of it. It's like a Luden's and a Ricola rammed into each other. You've got that herbal quality there. You've got that really like cherry candy. There's leather notes. There's a little bit of meatiness. Dean, I love the loamy, bit of charred wood, dark berries. Yeah. Such a pleasing nose. And there's like those aromas are being carried by alcohol, by esters in the wine. And there's a bit of an alcoholic element unto itself. And by that, I mean, not just the aroma, there's a quality of a little bit of a burn, a little bit of a warmth. So when you take your sniff, there's a tingle on the outside of the nose, and in the back, in the olfactory, it's a little bit warm. And that's an indication, I think, of a little bit of alcohol. Going back to the visual, when you tilt the wine, and if you're looking at it over something white, for example, it sometimes helps, but looking for rim variation. So the difference from right at the rim to sort of the center of the wine, is there a change in color? That's oftentimes the indication of some age. This wine seems to be really youthful. And then sometimes there's a little bit of a rim, a thinness of a meniscus, a rim of wateriness or clear liquid relative to the dense colored liquid. And there's not a major one here, but sometimes when that exists, you're looking at a little bit higher alcohol. I'm not seeing a major one, so maybe it's not super alcoholic, but there's a quality on the nose that has a little bit there. So, okay, so from the fruit side, dark berries, right? From the earth side, a little bit of that leathery note, a little bit of sort of a meaty note, not as pronounced there, perhaps. There's an herbal note. And then from the wood side, that charred kind of sweet wood spice note. There's a nice hint of kind of clove quality coming through, so maybe a little bit of French oak there. It's not the dominant note for sure on the nose. So let's try the wine and see what we find, how much of what we've just evaluated and assessed by way of the visual and the scent can be verified on the palate, and what else is new or contradictory even perhaps on the palate. Wow. So thinking about the texture of the body of the wine, where does this sit? Is it light, medium, robust? As we've mentioned many, many times before, is it skim milk, whole milk, 2% milk in the middle? Wow. How does it fill the mouth? Is it thin and sheeting? Does it expand and is it rich? Where are the tannins at? Where's that drying sensation that comes from them? Are they sweet tannins? Are they fine tannins? Are they big, chewy tannins? Where's the acidity at? Are you salivating for 5 seconds, for 10 seconds, for 20 seconds? How long does that go? And then where are the flavors at? The fruit, the earth, the wood. Oh, Sarah's here this evening. Hey guys, thanks for joining in for quick. I saw that you're coming this weekend on Sunday. I look forward to seeing you guys then too. You can absolutely pick up a couple bottles, but you're welcome to play along now using our descriptors and see what makes sense from just them alone. I agree, Curtis. The tannins are a little lighter than expected, right? We're not talking about major tannins, but it's pretty robust in terms of the wine. It's got a fruity juiciness to it. There's an acidity here that's helping kind of that juiciness that also I think, bolsters the idea of the tart cherry that Bobbin was picking up. It's like the cherry is really sweet and confectionery candied on the nose. It's not as much on the palate, I think, thanks to a little bit of that acidity that's here. And there's not a major amount of tannin. How about the alcohol? Ooh, making me salivate, huh? Wow, that's a fascinating wine. It's both robust and slightly lean. There's a sinewy core of leanness and then real ripeness around it. Fascinating. Any initial impressions that lead you to a certain varietal or place in the world? And then more to the point of the deductive process, anything you feel comfortable ruling out? For example, Gamay or Pinot Noir. Pretty comfortable ruling that out. Something like Nebbiolo, even Dolcetto. I think we could kind of rule out the tannin profile here isn't one that would suggest that. I think maybe we could go as far as saying, like, I don't think this presents in a way that's Cabernet Sauvignon, for example. And so there's not that broad structured tannin. There's a possibility that some expressions, say, of Petit Verdot could be in the running here, but I'm not, the more bold versions of it with more tannin structure, this is not presenting that. So it's like the softer red, not Grenache. Yeah, I would agree with that, unless this is coming from a very warm place and sort of just overcropped kind of Grenache. But no, it's not. Watch, it's Grenache. But going back to one of our previous tastings where we were toying with Pinotage, that's Sanso Pinot Noir. Like, I don't think we're there. The Sanso part was kind of that racy acidity and it had some fruit. But I don't think this is that. I don't think it's Pinotage, for example. So we're like chipping away at what it's not in order to, again, focus our targets on what it probably could be. And so revisiting the profile here and what we've built thus far, we're looking at a wine that has some potential alcohol, right? It has deep color, purplish color, purple. It's a little bit reddish now that it has less in my glass, but it had a purplish hue to it. Or a touch more. Malbec, I like that. Merlotti. Curtis, you're right. I mean, it's in that sort of Malbec Merlotti, like the fun versions of those grapes that are less about the structure, kind of more about the fruit expression, which would lead you maybe more to more to sort of a New World expression. But there's qualities about this that sort of earthy note, that earthy cough syrup quality that is more Old World, right? And this is, as we talk about many times in this tasting, hard to differentiate now between the Old World and the New World. But there's a quality about sort of Spain, France, Italy that we pick up on that is helpful in guiding. So maybe like a Corvina blend, Valpolicella, Ripasso. It has less of that raisiny note, more of medicinal candied confectionery note, and then that tart fruit on the palate. But if we're talking about Malbec, maybe we're talking about Argentina. Merlot, if this is Merlot like this is kind of hard to pin down because it seems like you could kind of produce this Merlot in a few different places. There's not a big signature part. I'm not picking up like plum. Anybody getting plum? Because sometimes that's like a nice tell of pushing you in the direction of Merlot. Power of suggestion. Primitivo or Zin, like that one, Dean. Yeah. I think with this profile and this texture, that cherry, round ripeness, more robust, some good acidity, you'd have to consider Zinfandel. Yeah. I don't get much. I'm thinking about now from the fruit, earth, wood perspective. Kind of got a little bit of that spice note on the nose. I don't get a whole bunch of it or much read of that on the palate. How about you guys? Is there quality of spice that's kind of coming through that would indicate some wood? It seems more like neutral wood if it is wooded and or stainless, some kind of neutral vessel that allows that fruit to really just be that sort of juicy fruit. So how about Syrah? We said no in the Grenache, but how about Syrah Grenache or a Rhone varietal, Rhone blend, I should say? How about blend vis-a-vis single varietal here? Yeah. It is kind of a short finish. That's where I'm kind of headed to with that conversation relative to wood, Dean. I think there's a possibility here that's less on the wood side. We're not getting that length. This is some real nice juvenile kind of primary fruit. When you say feels like oak, Curtis, are you picking up on like a textural quality or a flavor note? It is front loaded. I'm at a little bit of a loss in terms of a clear direction that is obvious. There's a little bit of alcohol building in the back. So textural quality, I get that, Curtis. So kind of a little bit of a mouth feel as much or more so, I should say, than an actual flavor profile, which makes sense. Yeah, some neutral oak kind of aerates the wine, if you will, a little bit in its rearing process, and you get this nice texture. There's a softness to this wine, while it has at the edges a little bit of a ruffled kind of light tannin profile. I would say it's kind of easy drinking in a way, but it has a robustness, and then there's a little bit of that warmth coming from the alcohol. There's that cough syrup, cough medicine, medicinal element keeps taking me back to the old world relative to some other new world spots. So like the Malbec from Argentina call, I would have a hard time with this from that perspective. Like I just haven't tried a Malbec to my knowledge with this kind of profile. I'm drawn more old world. So if that's the case for me, where do you go from there? If you're thinking more strongly about Malbec, do you go to Argentina? Do you go somewhere else? There's a sweetness, a sweet fruit profile, but it's definitely, if there's a little residual sugar, it's a small amount. That might be the case. There might be a little hint to make this enjoyable on the back end of this wine, but it is a little bit more of the profile of the spice and the flavors. The tannins are all, as we said, front-loaded. They're up front. All right, so as you're thinking about this wine, and we've cleared out what it isn't in many respects, like it's not Pinotage, we don't think, it's not Cabernet, it's not Pinot Noir, it's not Gamay. I think the Saint Laurent we tried, for example, like from Austria, not that. Is it Blaufränkisch from Austria? Is it Merlot? Is it Syrah? Is it Malbec, as was thrown out there? Is it, what other, like if you have the spectrum of light to robust, in the middle you have the medium range. We're like medium to heading toward robust, but we're sort of in that, if these are quarters, we're in that third quarter, over medium, but not full robust. And fruit expression, a little bit of that earthy note, a little bit of that herbal note. What about, say, Tempranillo? Oh, thank you, Curtis. I was gonna head to the Loire Valley in particular. I'm stuck in France in my head, and maybe Italy, but I wasn't considering so much Spain. And that's a great call. Like, what if we are talking about Tempranillo, say from Rioja, but Crianza, like easygoing entry point. You've got a lot of that wonderful cherry. You got a little bit of that herbal note. I like that call. Well-made Zin, Primitivo. So Italian version, or are you thinking well-made Zin, California version? There's like a sesame note that's peeking out. There's like a little hint on the nose of some wood, but not a lot. And it's certainly something I don't find easily identifiable on the palate. Yeah. So let's talk about countries then. Dean's going California's in. Cool. But if we're in France, let's just say we had to be. And then let's do the same thing with Spain and the same thing with, say, Italy. If we were in France, where we could rule out regions, can rule out Burgundy, can rule out Beaujolais. I don't think we can rule out the Rhone, for example, and Sheila right there, perfect. Côte de Rhône, yeah, absolutely in the mix, and the Languedoc in the mix on the southern part. Cahors and Malbec from there. Maturin Tannat, much more structured, much more tannin usually, so probably not. Bordeaux, kind of interesting. Merlot, right bank or Entre deux Mer kind of, maybe, right? We're cheating the game a little bit. And you're looking at the bottle shape. That is not a Bordeaux bottle. Bordeaux bottle has the high shoulder side, so less likely. This gives one more point credit possible for the Rhone if we're in France only. Cabernet Franc from the Loire. Touraine, maybe, like a fun, easygoing. I think we would pick up, we're picking up that herbal note. We're picking up the cherry note. I mean, that you could make an argument, a good one, for that in the Loire Valley. I don't think we're, too many other spots. There are other, of course, locations in France. So Loire, the Rhone, 2 spots in France. Rioja in Spain, giving us that cherry note. So less Tempranillo, say, from Ribera del Duero, where it gets kind of darker and richer. It's not Garnacha-like. We've tasted a number of Garnachas that just seem to be a little bit more reddish. So Tempranillo, let's say Rioja. Other places in Spain kind of get more into that black profile and riper. Portugal, perhaps, but less so, perhaps. Alentejo, maybe something from there, a blend. As we then head to Italy, like the Veneto, where we would get Corvina-based blends and something like Valpolicella or Ripasso. If we were on the Piedmont side of things, like we said, we didn't think it was Nebbiolo or Dolcetto, but maybe Barbera in a soft version or expression of that. Tuscany, maybe this is where you find Merlot, right? Merlot done from Tuscany in a sort of super Tuscan blend, but a lighter version one that isn't super oaked and as rich. Maybe I don't pick up a lot of Sangiovese quality, but it's that Merlot kind of in the Bulgari area. So that's a good option. Maybe it's more Puglia and it's Primitivo. That's kind of cool. So I think fairly speaking, as you're looking at this wine and trying to evaluate, you could make a decent argument about any one of those places. There's this quality of like wet wood and basement cement that for some reason it just draws me into Italy. But I think that's kind of a default, and I like the Rioja call too. So this wine's splitting the group. Curtis, you're saying, one of you saying old world, one of you saying new. I think that's fair. There's alcohol that's building more on the back end. So this is ripe, even though the fruit is somewhat tart. So was it picked early? Was the fruit kind of a spectrum of a vineyard where some of it has more ripeness because of longer sun exposure and some of it's in a shadow area? Is it a blend from different sites and therefore some of it's bright and vibrant, some of it's a little bit herbal? Like sometimes we're talking about less about a blend, but a blend of different sites or different selections or different harvests, not vintages I mean here, but more locations, to give you this dimensional quality. There seems that basement cement and wet wood element seems like the cellar itself might have a little bit of character, to put it kindly. It's not as pristine a cellar. Like it's got a little funk going on. It's not funky. It's not intentionally sort of pushed, but it is distinctive. Distinctive in sort of a old worldy, flawed kind of way that's pleasant. I don't mean flawed in a negative way. I think it gains a little bit of character. I was looking for sort of that fault of volatile acidity or Brettanomyces. That volatile acidity kind of gives off when the acidity is just funny enough to where you're getting that plastic Band-Aid, plastic kind of bin quality, and it sort of strips the fruit out. That's not the case here. Sometimes that though will magnify some of the fruit character and then make it tart. Maybe I was looking for that here. Brettanomyces giving us more of that barnyardy note. I don't think that's here, but those are oftentimes tells of a more old world cellar. I think I'd have a hard time. For me, I'm not planting a flag in the new world. I'm going to stay old world, and it's going to be just a dart thrown at the board. So Dean has one of old world leaning toward Primitivo. Okay, gotcha. So Dean prompted the thought with the Primitivo. I think that's a neat thought. I was thinking about Aglianico for a second. We had an Aglianico here from Puglia, for example, that was more in stainless, so it was lighter in expression. I think it had darker fruit, not quite as cherried. So I like the Tempranillo call. I like that quite a bit. I like the Corvina from Italy too, because there's this warmth. There's a little bit of alcohol. Kevin logging his guess, which is appropriate now. It's time. with confidence, medium confidence from France. So if you're going along with what my evaluation there was, that you're going to talk about the Rhone or the Languedoc or maybe the Loire, but more about southern France. So southern France, medium confidence. Who else? Sheila, are you staying Côte de Rhone? Eric, where are you going? Curtis? Sarah, if you're still playing along by way of watching, what do you see or what do you think? Where would you play the flag if prompted? And I am prompting. Yep, Côte de Rhone for Sheila. Eric is Rhone too. Okay. So Syrah Grenache blend, Syrah Grenache Mourvedre blend. Curtis, your Primitivo from Puglia. Nice. I'm not sure. I paused there because I'm torn a little bit between Italy and Spain. I think I'm gonna go Italy. I'm going to go a little Corvina blend, sort of. It's not Valpolicella. I think it's got a little bit more to it than that. So Ripasso from Valpolicella. I hear you, Curtis. Never sure. It's hard to be sure, right? There's very few occasions where it's like, yep, that's exactly it. And those are fun times too. But as I've said many, many times, they're oftentimes more fun here with you, especially when we're not exactly sure. And we're about to find out something. We're probably about to find out if there's a curve that's been thrown at us by someone named Julie. And so, great. Well, let's do this. I'm going to say Ripasso, Italy, and from an age standpoint, relatively youthful. And I might regret the Ripasso call because it's not like there's not the raisiny note. So I'm refiguring. Last minute change. Crianza, Tempranillo, Spain, Rioja, 2021, maybe 2022, but 2021, like three years old. Yeah. All right. You see me bounce around. Here I go. Spain, Rioja, Crianza level, kind of nice and fun. Willamette Pinot Noir, Curtis. Stab in the dark there. Go for it. I don't think so. I didn't get like the licoricey note. I got the cherry note, which was really lovely, and the herbal element, but the robustness, the kind of volume, wasn't it for me on the Willamette side. But there's a great chance I'm wrong. So go with your gut there for sure. Oh wow, they peeled back the label here as I'm coming down. 20, so 3-year-old, 3 to 5-year-old, 2 to 4-year-old. Let's say that. Oh, wow. I walked past it, but I didn't stay there. This is Barbera. 2022. Superiore, giving it a little degree more of alcohol as a result. So a little bit more of that richness, some of that Italian element. I was on the wrong side of Italy when I was in Italy, and then I jumped out of it. So completely wrong, but Barbera, neat. So as we were doing a little resume of what it might be in Italy, kind of cruised past this opportunity and didn't stay long enough to really figure out whether or not that was the right opportunity. So fun, really fun wine. This is a great producer and one that we just messed with a little bit and played with at our last wine buying event. This is a wine I like a lot. This is a wine that like serves different variations too. We were pouring this and it was a little bit more on that earthen side. And there was a discussion at the table as I was pouring this that it's kind of embarrassing too, because I was pouring this. There was a conversation more about this being sort of an equivalent to the idea of a village Burgundy. And bear with me for a second here. A wine that represents a little bit of earth, a little bit of fruit, pretty broad appeal, and a capability to just enjoy it without necessarily having to contemplate it, a price point that's appropriate. And as a result, a wine that once upon a time you might have found from a village level or a basic Bourgogne level from a great producer in Burgundy, which now costs have just gone up through the roof, and you can't access a wine like that easily, and from a price point that you feel comfortable on a Wednesday night or on a Thursday night, just popping it and drinking with whatever, from leftovers in the fridge to pasta or pizza to whatever you're drinking. And you have 12 bottles of something like this hanging out in your cellar that I'm just going to drink this. I'm not aging this. I'm not trying to make this a special wine, but it's enjoyable. And it delivers a level of intrigue and character without it being super serious that you can just enjoy. And so from that standpoint, I like Barale a lot and what they're doing. They make pretty wines that are accessible and enjoyable and from a place, but there's a ripeness here too. And then there's that back off of the ripeness, that tartness. We're in a place that gets both ripening of fruit and that tartness being in the northwestern part of Italy. So from an alcohol standpoint, this is 14%. So a little warm, but not super, right? How fun. Well, always fun, because I get to do this with you. Thank you all for participating and for playing along. Some of you without the wine even. That's great. We'll make sure we rectify that, Sarah, here on Sunday as you come in. But much appreciated. I don't think I would have jumped to Spain without your help. So damn you for helping, because I was wrong. But nevertheless, this is a great experience. One I look forward to each and every month, and think about it all throughout the month. It's a blast sitting at the front of our entryway in the vestibule and chat with guests about this experience and referencing what all of you have come to do in these chats, which is to expand your palate and to share your perspective about wine, and most importantly for me, to connect with each other via wine. And that's the best part. So it's fun. I agree, Dean. Super fun, Brian. Thank you for saying so. And you're always welcome, Sheila, as are all of you. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you hopefully in the restaurant soon. If not before then we'll venture back here a month from now and do this again. Cheers.